The silence in my house was a heavy blanket, thicker than usual these days. It pressed down on me, a constant reminder of what was missing. Sarah, my wife, had been gone for 6 months, but the ache in my chest felt as fresh as the day I'd heard the news. I lived out here, in a small, remote town in the American heartland, for the quiet, for the stars, for the way the world seemed to slow down. Now, the quiet was a torment, each tick of the old grandfather clock echoing the emptiness. I'd wake up, reach for her, only to find cold sheets. My coffee, once a shared ritual, now sat untouched, growing cold in my hand, its warmth fading just like the memories I tried so hard to hold on to. I tried to keep busy, to lose myself in the simple rhythms of life, but something strange started happening. It began subtly, almost unnoticeably. I'd glance at the microwave, 11:11. Check the time on my phone, 3:33. Drive down the highway, and the car in front of me would have a license plate ending in 111. At first, I wrote it off as my brain playing tricks, a grief-induced pattern recognition, grasping at straws for meaning where there was none. But it kept happening, every day, sometimes multiple times a day. It felt like the universe was trying to get my attention, tapping me on the shoulder, but I just wanted to be left alone with my sorrow. Then came the dreams. They weren't the usual hazy, forgettable kind. These were vivid, almost painfully real. Sarah was there, just as I remembered her smile warm, her eyes full of that knowing spark. But she wasn't just there. She was talking. Her voice, so clear, so familiar, yet shrouded in an ethereal quality, would whisper riddles, hint at hidden paths, speak of a coming change. I'd wake up with her words hanging in the air, just out of reach. A puzzle I couldn't quite solve. One night, she spoke of a key and a gateway, her voice echoing with an urgency that left me breathless. It was unsettling, this feeling that she was trying to communicate from beyond, not just a memory, but an active presence. The natural world around my isolated home seemed to feel it too. Things started acting odd. The birds, usually so predictable, began migrating earlier, or sometimes not at all. I'd see flocks of geese flying south in the middle of spring, or robins stubbornly staying through the first snow. Then there were the lights in the night sky. Not stars, not planes, but strange, shimmering glows that danced and pulsed before vanishing. My dog, a usually calm golden retriever named Buster, would sit by the window for hours, staring out into the woods, his low growl a constant background hum. He'd twitch his ears at sounds I couldn't hear, his fur bristling at things I couldn't see. It all created a growing sense of unease, a feeling that the world was shifting on its axis, and I was just a passenger watching it happen. One rainy afternoon, seeking refuge from the relentless thoughts, I wandered into Sarah's study. It was a room I hadn't touched since she passed, a shrine to her intellect and passions. Dust motes danced in the slivers of light, cutting through the blinds. On a forgotten shelf, tucked away behind a stack of old journals, I found it. A thick, leather-bound book, its pages yellowed with age. The title, in faded gold lettering, read, Ancient Sumerian Civilizations and Linguistics. Sarah had always been fascinated by ancient cultures, but I'd never seen this book before. My fingers traced the intricate symbols on its cover. When I opened it, the first page held a surprise. A cryptic inscription, seemingly in Sarah's elegant handwriting, was scrawled at the top. It was a series of symbols I didn't recognize, followed by a single word: awaken. It felt like a direct message, a whisper from her to me, linking her to this ancient, mysterious knowledge. The synchronicity, The dreams, the strange occurrences in nature, they all coalesced into a single, impossible moment, one clear, star-filled night. I was out on my porch, Buster asleep at my feet, gazing up at the Milky Way, trying to lose myself in the vastness of it all. That's when I saw it. A brief, almost imperceptible flicker in the blackness, not a shooting star, not a satellite. It was a geometric pattern, shimmering with an otherworldly light, twisting and folding in on itself in a way that defied physics. It was there for only a second, maybe two, then gone, leaving no trace. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, convinced my mind was playing tricks on me, that grief had finally pushed me over the edge, but the image was seared into my memory, an impossible geometry that left me questioning my sanity. I grappled with it all, the recurring numbers, Sarah's spectral voice in my dreams, the odd behavior of the world around me, that impossible light in the sky. Was it all just a descent into madness, a side effect of profound loss? Or was there something else at play? A nagging feeling persisted, a deep intuition that Sarah was trying to communicate, that these events were more than just coincidence. It felt like the universe was pulling back a curtain, revealing something I wasn't meant to see, a profound spiritual awakening that was both terrifying and undeniably real. I knew deep down that my quiet, solitary life was about to become anything but. The echoes of loss were still there, but now they were joined by the whispers of the universe, growing louder with each passing day. The Sumerian text became my new obsession. The dusty tome, once an obscure artifact from Sarah's past, now consumed my nights. I found myself drawn to its complex symbols and forgotten narratives. Each page turned a step deeper into a world I never knew existed. The smell of old paper and the quiet rustle of pages filled the otherwise silent house, a constant companion to my growing fascination. I'd spend hours tracing the cuneiform script with my finger, feeling a strange connection to the ancient hands that had carved these stories into clay tablets millennia ago. It wasn't just academic curiosity. It felt like a sacred duty, a continuation of something Sarah had started. As I delved deeper, I started to notice patterns, recurring symbols, specific numerical sequences, and even certain constellations kept appearing throughout the text. These weren't random. They mirrored the numerical synchronicity I'd been experiencing in my daily life. The 1111s, the 333s, the license plates. It was like the book was a decoder ring for the universe. Or perhaps the universe was a giant book, and this Sumerian text held its key. A growing connection formed in my mind, linking my personal grief, Sarah's cryptic message, and this ancient knowledge. It felt less like I was studying a forgotten culture and more like I was uncovering a hidden layer of reality, one Sarah had somehow been privy to. My dreams, which had always been a jumble of subconscious thoughts, now became almost lucid. Sarah's messages intensified, her voice clearer, her presence more palpable. She wasn't just speaking in riddles anymore. She was guiding me. In one particularly vivid dream, I saw her, standing in a field of stars, pointing to a specific page in the Sumerian book. Her finger highlighted words that seemed to glow: key, gateway, and truth. When I woke, the words echoed in my mind. I immediately found the page she'd indicated in the dream. The passage spoke of a key to the heavens, a gateway between worlds, and an ultimate truth hidden from plain sight. It was unnerving how precise her dream guidance had become. The atmosphere around me began to shift in subtle but undeniable ways. I started feeling an electrical charge in the air, a tingling sensation on my skin that wasn't static. Faint, unidentifiable hums would sometimes fill the quiet rooms, just at the edge of my hearing, like distant machinery or a low-frequency vibration. Out of the corner of my eye, I'd occasionally perceive fleeting shadows, quick movements that vanished when I turned to look directly. The air in the house, usually still and heavy with grief, now felt charged, thick with anticipation. Buster, my golden retriever, would often sit up suddenly, ears perked, staring intently at empty spaces, sometimes letting out a soft, questioning whine. He felt it too. Following another subtle hint from one of Sarah's dream messages, a vision of a constellation overlaid with a specific symbol from the book, I returned to the Sumerian text. I meticulously re-examined the pages she had highlighted, looking for anything I might have missed, and there it was. Not an obvious drawing, but a series of faint lines and dots, almost imperceptible, hidden within the intricate patterns of the cuneiform itself. When I carefully traced them, connecting the dots as Sarah had shown me in the dream, a diagram emerged. It looked like a star chart, but also a geographical marker, a set of coordinates. It pointed to a specific, remote location deep within the American wilderness, miles from any known road or settlement. My initial reaction was a mix of disbelief and fear. I was a quiet man, a former professor, not an adventurer. The idea of trekking into the wilderness based on a dream and an ancient text seemed insane. But despite my skepticism, an overwhelming sense of destiny began to compel me. It wasn't a choice. It was an irresistible pull, a magnetic force drawing me towards this unknown destination. It felt as if Sarah's spirit, now more present than ever, was leading me, pushing me forward, whispering promises of answers I desperately needed. The grief that had paralyzed me for months now transformed into a powerful engine of purpose. I began to prepare. I packed minimal supplies, a sturdy backpack, a tent, a map, a compass, and enough food and water for several days. I felt a profound sense of purpose, a feeling I hadn't experienced since before Sarah's passing. The sound of the wind outside my window, usually a mournful lament, now seemed to whisper encouragement, urging me onward. My quiet, solitary life was indeed about to change, but not in the way I ever imagined. The echoes of loss were still there, but now they were joined by the powerful, undeniable beckoning of an enigma, drawing me into the heart of the unknown. I was no longer just grieving. I was on a quest, guided by a love that transcended death, and a destiny I was only just beginning to understand. The journey to the remote location was exactly as I had imagined, and yet far more demanding. The initial paved roads quickly gave way to gravel, then dirt tracks, and finally, no path at all. My old SUV, usually reliable for grocery runs, groaned and protested with every mile, rattling over rocks and through shallow streams. I had to abandon it eventually, parking it discreetly behind a thick cluster of pines, hoping it wouldn't be discovered. From there, it was all on foot. The terrain grew increasingly difficult, a relentless climb through dense forest, over jagged rocks, and across narrow, sometimes treacherous ridges. The air, thick and humid, at lower elevations, grew thin and cold as I ascended, making every breath a conscious effort. My muscles ached, my lungs burned, and sweat stung my eyes, but I pushed on, driven by an urgency that defied my physical limitations. There was no turning back. As I drew closer to the coordinates, a strange quiet settled over the environment. It wasn't just the absence of human noise. It was an eerie, profound silence. The usual sounds of the wilderness, the rustle of leaves, the chirping of insects, the distant calls of birds, faded away, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. The trees stood impossibly still, their branches unmoving even in a light breeze. The light filtering through the canopy seemed to shift, taking on an almost ethereal quality, softer, yet somehow more intense. Occasionally, a strange, shimmering light would flicker in the distance, a fleeting pulse of luminescence that seemed to beckon me onward, a silent promise of something extraordinary. It was like walking into a dream, a landscape both familiar and utterly alien. My apprehension grew with every step, but so did a strange sense of wonder. I had been hiking for what felt like an eternity, the sun beginning its slow descent, when it happened. A blinding flash of light erupted in the sky directly above me, so sudden and intense that it burned spots into my vision. Before I could even register what I was seeing, an earth-shattering crash ripped through the air. The sound was deafening, a monstrous roar that vibrated through the ground beneath my feet, shaking the very bones in my body. It was a terrifying mix of tearing metal, explosive force, and a sound I could only describe as a cosmic shriek. I was thrown off balance, tumbling down a small incline, my head hitting something hard. Disoriented, my ears ringing, I lay there for a moment, trying to piece together what had just occurred. The air was thick with the smell of ozone and something burnt, metallic and acrid. Pushing myself up, my body screaming in protest, I stumbled towards the source of the impact. The ground was scorched, trees were splintered, and a deep smoking crater marred the landscape. In the center of this devastation, embedded deep within the earth, was a metallic craft. It was unlike anything I had ever seen, sleek and impossibly smooth, with no visible seams or rivets. It glowed faintly, with an internal light, a soft, pulsating blue that seemed to hum on the edge of my hearing. Smoke curled from its ruptured side, and I could feel an intense heat radiating from it. This was no airplane. This was something else entirely. My mind struggled to comprehend, but my feet kept moving, drawn forward by an irresistible force. Amidst the wreckage, partially obscured by twisted metal and broken branches, I saw it. A being. It lay motionless, clearly injured, its form elegant and ethereal. It wasn't monstrous, not in the way I had always imagined aliens to be. Its skin was a pearlescent white, almost translucent, and its limbs were long and slender. Its head was larger than a human's, with large, dark eyes that were currently closed and no visible hair. A faint, almost imperceptible light emanated from its body, a soft glow that pulsed rhythmically, like a dying heartbeat. It looked fragile, vulnerable, and utterly out of place in this earthly forest. My initial shock and fear were quickly replaced by something else, something I hadn't felt so strongly since Sarah's passing. A profound sense of empathy. Looking at this fallen creature, so obviously in distress, I saw not an invader, but a victim. It stirred something deep within me, a protective instinct, a connection to all living things that Sarah had always fostered in me. Overcoming my terror, I made a snap decision. I had to help it. The thought was clear, immediate, and without question. It was an inexplicable connection, a feeling that this moment, this being, was intrinsically linked to everything that had brought me here. I carefully approached the being, my heart pounding in my chest, a strange mix of fear and determination. As I drew closer, the faint light emanating from its body seemed to warm the air around it, a gentle heat that was oddly comforting. Its skin, when I tentatively reached out, felt smooth and cool, almost like polished stone, yet vibrantly alive. I could see a deep gash on its side, glowing with the same blue light as the craft, but now tinged with a darker, viscous fluid. Using my limited medical knowledge, a few first aid basics I'd learned years ago, and makeshift supplies from my backpack, bandages, antiseptic wipes, even a clean shirt, I began to attempt to stabilize it. I worked slowly, gently, trying not to cause any more harm. The creature remained still, its faint light flickering, its breath a barely perceptible whisper. I talked to it softly, reassuringly, though I knew it couldn't understand my words. I just hoped it could feel my intent. The warmth radiating from its skin grew stronger as I worked, a silent testament to a life hanging by a thread and my desperate attempt to save it. I spent the next few hours trying to patch up the alien as best I could. The wound on its side was deep, but the strange blue fluid that seeped from it seemed to coagulate slowly, almost like a living sealant. I cleaned around it, applied pressure with my cleanest shirt, and wrapped it tightly with the bandages I had. It was crude, but it was all I had. The being remained unconscious, its breathing shallow, but the rhythmic pulsing light from its body continued, a fragile beacon of life. As darkness fell, a new problem emerged. I couldn't leave it out here. The night air was cold, and whatever injuries it had, exposure wouldn't help. My cabin was the only option, remote enough that no one would stumble upon us, and it offered shelter. Getting it back was an ordeal. Despite its delicate appearance, the alien was surprisingly heavy. I fashioned a makeshift stretcher from some fallen branches in my tarp, and slowly, painstakingly, I dragged it through the forest. Every rustle of leaves, every snapping twig, made me jump. I was keenly aware of how insane this was, how unbelievable, but the feeling of responsibility, the strange connection I felt, pushed me forward. It took hours, a grueling journey through the dark, silent woods. By the time I reached the cabin, I was exhausted, my muscles aching, but a strange determination still fueled me. I laid the alien gently on my living room floor, near the fireplace. The warmth seemed to revive it slightly, as the faint blue light pulsed a little stronger. I spent the next few days in a strange routine. I'd tend to its wound, offering sips of water, though it never seemed to drink. I tried to figure out what it ate, what it needed, but it remained unresponsive. Its skin felt cool to the touch, and its large, dark eyes stayed shut. The cabin was filled with an otherworldly calm, a quiet presence that was both unnerving and strangely comforting. I felt like a parent nursing a sick child, completely out of my depth, but driven by an instinct to protect. One afternoon, as I was changing the bandages on its side, I felt a strange sensation in my head. It wasn't a sound, but more like a pressure, a subtle hum that resonated deep within my skull. Then an image flashed in my mind, a swirling galaxy, vast and beautiful. It was gone as quickly as it appeared. I blinked, shaking my head, wondering if I was finally losing it. But then it happened again, a feeling of profound sorrow, a wave of sadness that wasn't my own, washed over me, so intense it brought tears to my eyes. And then an image of ancient symbols, glowing with a soft light, like those in Sarah's Sumerian book. The telepathic connection was subtle at first, just fragmented images and raw emotions. But as the alien healed, it grew stronger, clearer. I started to understand. This being, this alien, was communicating with me. It was showing me things, sharing its thoughts, its history, its purpose. It didn't speak with words, but with feelings, with vivid pictures painted directly into my mind. I learned its name, or rather, the closest human approximation of it, Xylos. Through these transmissions, Xylos revealed the true nature of the Sumerian key. It wasn't a physical key, not a lock, not something you could hold in your hand. It was a complex vibrational frequency, a pattern of consciousness. It was encoded, not just in ancient texts like the one Sarah had, but within certain human bloodlines, a dormant potential waiting to be activated. It was like a cosmic tuning fork, meant to bring humanity into harmony with a universal frequency, to unlock a higher state of awareness, and then, the most astonishing revelation, Sarah, my wife. Xylos showed me images of her, not just memories of her face, but her thoughts, her understanding. She had known about this key. She had been actively working to understand it, to find a way to activate it. Her dreams, the recurring numbers, the strange occurrences, they weren't just grief-induced hallucinations or coincidences. They were her attempts, from beyond the veil, to guide me. She had been preparing me for this, for Xylos, for this moment. She had left the Sumerian book for me to find, knowing I would eventually follow the breadcrumbs. My heart ached with a new kind of grief, one mixed with awe and a profound sense of her continued presence. Xylos also explained humanity's predicament. We were on a perilous timeline, facing critical choices. It showed me visions of a future where humanity thrived, united and conscious, and another, darker future, filled with division, destruction, and self-inflicted wounds. The Sumerian key, if activated collectively, held the potential to unlock a path to profound advancement, to universal harmony, to guide us away from the brink. But there was a warning too. Xylos showed me images of diverging timelines, like branches splitting from a main tree. Our current reality was fragile, and certain choices could lead to irreversible shifts into less desirable futures. These weren't just theoretical possibilities. They were real dangers, consequences of our collective actions and inaction. The stakes felt impossibly high. As the days turned into weeks, Xylos grew stronger. The faint blue light around its body brightened, and its wounds began to close, leaving no visible scars. Its eyes, when they finally opened, were deep pools of liquid obsidian, filled with an ancient wisdom that seemed to stretch back eons. Looking into them, I felt a connection that transcended species, a profound understanding. I realized then that my encounter with Xylos was not accidental. It was a predestined event, orchestrated by forces far beyond my comprehension. My wife, Sarah, had played a pivotal role in all of this, guiding me, pushing me, even in death, towards this incredible truth. My life, which had felt so empty and without purpose since she left, was now filled with a new, terrifying, yet exhilarating destiny. I was no longer just a grieving widower. I was a part of something vast, something ancient, something that could change everything. The weight of this knowledge settled upon me, a heavy cloak of responsibility. My role in this unfolding cosmic drama was just beginning. The alien, Xylos, now fully recovered and moving with a quiet grace around my cabin, began to guide me. This wasn't a lesson in the traditional sense, but more like an unfolding, a gentle push towards a different way of perceiving the world. It showed me how to interpret the complex vibrational patterns of the Sumerian key. It wasn't about reading words or solving puzzles. It was a process that involved deep meditation, a resonance with specific frequencies, and an expanded awareness of all my sensory input. I would sit for hours, sometimes with my eyes closed, sometimes just looking out at the forest, trying to follow Xylos's silent instructions. It felt like learning to breathe all over again. But this time, breathing in the very essence of existence. Slowly, subtly, I started to notice things I never had before. My perception of the world around me began to heighten, like turning up the volume on a radio I hadn't known was playing. I could hear the subtle frequencies in nature, the hum of the earth beneath my feet, the specific pitch of the wind through different trees, the quiet, almost musical vibration of the stones in the creek bed. It wasn't a sound in my ears, but something deeper, a feeling that resonated in my chest. I began to see energy fields around living things, not like some glowing aura, but more like a shimmer, a slight distortion in the air around plants and animals, a faint, almost invisible pulsation that spoke of life force. It was like looking at the world through a new kind of lens, where everything was connected by invisible threads of light and energy. I could feel the interconnectedness of all existence, a deep, pervasive current that ran through everything, from the smallest insect to the distant stars. The air itself felt alive, charged with information. The world around me, once just a collection of objects and sounds, now vibrated with new, profound meaning. It was overwhelming at first, like being plunged into a symphony with a million instruments playing at once. But gradually, with Xylos's patient guidance, I learned to focus, to filter, to understand. Through this heightened state, I started to access memories and insights that were not my own. They came in flashes, like vivid dreams, but I was awake. I saw glimpses of ancient Sumerian civilization, not as history from a book, but as living, breathing moments. I saw the original custodians of the key, wise men and women who understood these vibrational patterns and used them to live in harmony with their world. I saw their temples, not as stone structures, but as resonance chambers, designed to amplify these frequencies. I witnessed their wisdom, their profound connection to the cosmos, and then, heartbreakingly, their eventual downfall. It was a slow slipping away from the harmony, a loss of connection that led to discord and ruin. It was a warning, clear as day, echoing across millennia. This process of awakening was emotionally and spiritually taxing. There were moments of intense joy, of pure wonder, as I grasped new truths. But there were also moments of deep confusion, of fear, as my old understanding of reality crumbled. I felt like I was shedding layers of grief and self-doubt that had clung to me since Sarah's death. They were replaced by a growing sense of clarity, a burning purpose that now defined my every waking moment. My heart felt lighter, no longer weighed down by sorrow, yet also burdened by the immense weight of this new knowledge, the responsibility that came with it. Xylos patiently explained that the Sumerian key was not a technological device, not some ancient gadget to be activated. It was a tool for awakening consciousness, a way to harmonize human minds with the universal frequency. It was about tuning ourselves, like instruments, to the fundamental rhythm of the cosmos. By doing so, we could unlock latent abilities within ourselves: intuition, empathy, creativity, even healing. It was about understanding that we are not separate, but integral parts of a vast, intelligent universe. But with this power came a somber warning. Xylos made it clear that the key could also be misused. If activated by those with ill intentions, those driven by greed or a desire for control, it could lead to manipulation, to the enslavement of minds, to a perversion of its true purpose. The stakes, I realized, were incredibly high. This wasn't just about my personal journey. It was about the future of humanity. One day, after weeks of intense preparation and guidance, Xylos indicated it was time for a partial activation of the key within myself. I sat cross-legged on the floor of my cabin, the ancient Sumerian book open before me, though I no longer needed to read the words. I could feel their vibration. Xylos's presence was a steady, calming force beside me. I closed my eyes, focusing on the patterns, the frequencies, the interconnectedness that Xylos had shown me. I felt a surge of energy, a powerful current of light and information flow through every cell of my body. It was both exhilarating and terrifying. My mind expanded, my consciousness stretching beyond the confines of my skull, beyond the cabin, beyond the earth itself. I experienced a profound sense of interconnectedness, a feeling of being one with everything. And then, a brief, overwhelming vision of possible futures flashed before my inner eye. I saw pathways, choices, consequences. I saw humanity's potential for glory and its capacity for self-destruction. It was like looking at 1,000 different timelines, all branching out from this very moment. The vision faded, leaving me breathless, trembling, but undeniably changed. The Sumerian key had begun to unlock something within me, something ancient and powerful. This was just the beginning. The visions from that partial activation stayed with me. They weren't just random pictures. They were like memories of events that hadn't happened yet, or might happen. Xylos, seeing the confusion and wonder in my eyes, began to explain. He told me that the Sumerian texts weren't just historical records or myths. They contained prophecies, not in the fortune-telling sense, but as warnings and guides. These prophecies didn't just talk about the rise and fall of their own civilization. They spoke of humanity's larger journey, our recurring patterns, our current trajectory. He showed me how ancient warnings about environmental degradation, social division, and the pursuit of power over wisdom mirrored the global crises we face today. The parallels were chillingly precise. He explained that humanity stands at a critical juncture, a true crossroads. We are facing a choice, he said, more profound than any we've encountered before. We could continue down the path of division, of endless conflict, of exploiting our planet and each other, which would lead to a predictable, destructive outcome. Or we could embrace a more unified, conscious existence, one where empathy and collaboration guide our actions. The future, he emphasized, was not set in stone. It was a fluid thing, constantly being shaped by the collective choices we make, moment by moment. Xylos then revealed his own mission. He was part of a collective, a guardian race, as he called them. Their purpose was to observe and, at critical junctures, assist developing civilizations like ours. They weren't here to interfere directly or dictate our path, but to offer knowledge, to help us avoid falling into destructive patterns that had plagued other worlds. They had seeded information on Earth long ago, embedded in ancient cultures, waiting for the right time, for the right minds to rediscover it. The Sumerian key was one such seed. He stressed that while the key offered a clear path, the ultimate choice, the hard work, lay with humanity itself. It wasn't about a savior or an external force fixing our problems. It was about individual choice, individual awakening. Each person who chose awareness, who chose to resonate with the higher frequencies of the key, contributed to a collective shift in consciousness. It was like a ripple effect, each pebble dropping into the water, creating wider and wider circles of change. I struggled with the immense weight of this knowledge. It was one thing to grieve my wife, to feel lost, It was another entirely to be told the fate of an entire planet rested, in some small part, on what I did next. I felt a profound responsibility, a sense of urgency, to share what I had learned, to warn people. Yet a fear gnawed at me, the fear of being dismissed, of being called crazy, of being misunderstood. How could I explain any of this to anyone? Who would believe me? It was during this time that Xylos facilitated something truly extraordinary. He helped me connect deeper with Sarah. Not just vague feelings or dream messages anymore. It was like a clear channel opened between us. I received direct messages from her. Not just guidance about the key, but words of love, of reassurance, of encouragement. She told me she was proud of me, that I was strong enough for this. She reminded me of the love we shared, and how that love was a powerful force, capable of moving mountains. Her voice, clear in my mind, solidified my purpose. It wasn't just some alien telling me what to do. It was Sarah, my Sarah, guiding me from beyond. She was still with me, still fighting for a better future, and now I was her hands and feet in this world. Xylos made it clear that his time on Earth was limited. He had fulfilled his immediate purpose, to guide me, to activate the key within me, to share the ancient knowledge. He urged me to become a catalyst for change. You have seen the paths, he communicated. Now you must help others see them too. The truth of the Sumerian key, the choices humanity faces, must be shared. Time is short. His words weren't a demand, but a plea, filled with a deep love for humanity, a hope that we would choose wisely. I knew then, without a doubt, that my life would never be the same. The quiet recluse, lost in grief, was gone. In his place stood a man with a mission, a messenger of ancient truths, ready to face whatever came next. The full weight of what that meant had yet to sink in, but the path was clear. The quiet recluse, lost in grief, was gone. In his place stood a man with a mission, a messenger of ancient truths, ready to face whatever came next. The full weight of what that meant had yet to sink in, but the path was clear. Xylos, sensing my readiness, began to reveal a darker aspect of the situation, a shadow that lurked just beyond humanity's perception. He spoke of a growing external threat, not just the internal struggles of humanity, but forces actively seeking to exploit or suppress the activation of the Sumerian key. These were not physical invaders, he explained, but entities or ideologies that operated in the shadows, manipulating events, subtly guiding humanity down paths of discord and control. Their influence was pervasive, woven into the fabric of human society. Often mistaken for natural inclinations or historical patterns, they thrived on fear, division, and ignorance, working to keep humanity in a state of lower consciousness, preventing its natural evolution. Xylos made it clear that these forces saw the awakening of the Sumerian key as a direct threat to their long-held dominion. If humanity collectively activated the key, it would create an energetic shield, making us impervious to their subtle manipulations. It would allow for true self-determination, a future where our choices were truly our own, free from unseen puppeteers. The stakes, I realized, were far higher than I had imagined. It wasn't just about unlocking potential. It was about liberation. As Xylos shared this, I felt a heavy sense of dread, but also a surge of determination. The knowledge wasn't just a gift. It was a weapon, a defense. We had to activate this key, not just for our own growth, but for our very freedom. The alien then began to prepare for his departure. His physical form, once frail and injured, now radiated a quiet strength. The cabin, which had become a sanctuary for his recovery, felt charged with an unspoken energy. There were no grand pronouncements, no dramatic goodbyes. Our farewell was a bittersweet moment, filled with a deep sense of gratitude and a profound understanding of our shared destiny. He looked at me, and through our telepathic link, I felt a wave of hope, trust, and an ancient, unconditional love for all sentient beings. He placed a hand on my shoulder, a gesture that resonated deep within my soul. The touch was a final, powerful telepathic imprint. It wasn't information or a command, but an experience. I felt a surge of universal love, an overwhelming sense of interconnectedness that transcended time and space. I understood, truly understood, that every being, every star, every atom was part of the same cosmic dance. And within that vastness, humanity held an incredible, unique potential. A burning light ignited within my chest, a warmth that spread through every fiber of my being. It was the echo of Xylos's essence, a reminder of the truth he had shared, forever etched into my consciousness. Then, as subtly as he had arrived, he was gone. One moment he was there, the next, the space was empty, filled only with the lingering scent of ozone and something akin to fresh mountain air. The cabin felt quiet again, but it was a different kind of quiet. Not the silence of grief, but the silence of profound change. I was alone, but I felt more connected than ever before. I returned to my mundane existence, or at least what used to be mundane. Everything was different now. The world was no longer just physical. It was a tapestry of energy, intention, and potential. The trees outside my window hummed with unseen frequencies. The distant mountains seemed to breathe, their ancient forms radiating a calm power. My senses were permanently altered. I could perceive layers of reality I never knew existed. The air vibrated with subtle energies, the colors of nature seemed more vivid, and the sounds carried hidden nuances. It was as if a veil had been lifted, revealing the true, vibrant complexity of existence. This transformation was overwhelming at times, almost too much to process. But underneath it all was an unwavering sense of purpose. I knew, with absolute certainty, what I had to do. The urgency of my mission was palpable. I had to find a way to communicate this profound truth, to awaken others to the power of the Sumerian key. I had to start with those who were already seeking answers, those whose hearts and minds were open enough to receive such a radical truth. I knew it wouldn't be easy. The world was full of noise, of distractions, of skepticism. But I also knew the truth I carried was too important to keep to myself. I had been given a gift, a calling, and I would answer it. The first step, I realized, was to understand how to even begin. How do you tell the world that aliens are real, that your dead wife sent you on a cosmic scavenger hunt, and that humanity's future hangs in the balance of an ancient vibrational frequency? The task was daunting, but the burning light within me, the echo of Xylos's love, spurred me onward. I had to find a way to bridge the gap between this new reality and the one most people still perceived. My journey, I knew, had only just begun. The narrator, no longer a grieving recluse, lost in the quiet echoes of his past, embraced his new role as a messenger. The silence of his cabin was now filled with the determined tapping of keys as he began to document his experiences. This wasn't about personal glory or seeking fame. It was about sharing the truth Xylos had revealed, the profound implications of the Sumerian key. He wrote down everything, from the strange coincidences and his wife's cryptic dreams to the crash site, Xylos's healing, and the complex telepathic transmissions. He detailed the true nature of the key, not as a physical artifact, but as a vibrational frequency, a pattern of consciousness. His words flowed, raw and honest, fueled by the burning light Xylos had left within him. He knew he couldn't just shout this from the rooftops. The world wasn't ready for that. Instead, he started to subtly connect with individuals who seemed to be on a similar wavelength. He looked for people who talked about synchronicity, who felt a deeper connection to the natural world, or who expressed a yearning for something more than what mainstream society offered. He found them in online forums dedicated to ancient mysteries, in small local groups discussing alternative spirituality, and sometimes even in casual conversations at the grocery store. He recognized the flicker of recognition in their eyes, the inherent spiritual curiosity that marked them as potential activators of the key. He shared snippets of his story, carefully gauging their reactions, looking for that spark of understanding that told him they were ready to hear more. His message, carefully crafted and delivered with a quiet intensity, framed itself as a critical choice for humanity. He explained that humanity stood at a crossroads. One path led to continued slumber, a perpetuation of division, conflict, and a blind adherence to systems that kept them from their true potential. The other path, illuminated by the Sumerian key, was an awakening to a higher consciousness, a collective shift that could influence timelines and create a future of harmony, understanding, and unprecedented growth. He wasn't telling them what to believe, but inviting them to consider the possibility, to feel the resonance of the truth within themselves. He emphasized, with unwavering conviction, that the Sumerian key's true power lay not in individual activation, but in collective intent. It wasn't about one person, one hero. It was about humanity coming together, a symphony of awakened minds, each contributing to a shared purpose and an elevated consciousness. He painted a picture of a world where empathy was the default, where innovation served the common good, and where the interconnectedness of all life was not just a concept, but a lived reality. He explained how this collective awakening could create a powerful energetic field, a shield against the manipulative forces Xylos had warned him about. He acknowledged the ongoing, unseen battle for humanity's future. He spoke of the subtle influences, the constant nudges towards fear and division, the forces that thrived on keeping humanity unaware of its own power. But he stressed the importance of individual awareness and conscious choice as the most potent weapons against this manipulation. Every person who chose awareness, who sought truth, who cultivated empathy, was a warrior in this silent war, contributing to the shift. He encouraged them to question narratives, to trust their inner knowing, and to understand that their individual choices had ripple effects far beyond what they could immediately perceive. Despite the gravity of the situation, the immense challenges ahead, the narrator expressed profound hope. This wasn't a naive optimism, but a deep, abiding faith in humanity's capacity for transformation. He had seen the darkness, understood the threats, but he had also felt the boundless love of Xylos, the enduring spirit of his wife, and the nascent stirrings of awakening in others. He believed, with every fiber of his being, that the inherent goodness within humanity, once fully unleashed, would prevail. The path would be difficult, he knew, but it was a path worth walking. He ended his message, whether in person, in writing, or in his growing online presence, with a direct appeal. He invited his audience to look for the signs he had once dismissed, the recurring numbers, the vivid dreams, the strange occurrences in nature. He urged them to trust their intuition, that quiet inner voice that often gets drowned out by the noise of the world. He asked them to consider their own role in activating the Sumerian key within themselves, to see themselves not as passive observers, but as active participants in shaping the future. He encouraged them to subscribe to his channels, to follow his journey, to engage in the conversation, and to join the movement. He left them not with fear, but with a sense of urgency, a profound possibility, and the quiet, undeniable understanding that the future of humanity rested in their hands, waiting to be unlocked. The journey had indeed just begun, but now he was no longer alone.